Hola, hola. You're listening to First Gen Healing, a podcast on Latinx healing and awakening journeys. My name is Priscila Luna. I am your host. And first and foremost, I just want to say Feliz Año Nuevo, Happy New Year. I hope you guys had a good one, and I hope that you're excited for 2023. I know I am. I'm excited for what it's going to bring me personally, but of course, also First Gen Healing. 2022, if you don't know, is where it all started. At the beginning of the year, I took the leap to start posting online content geared toward the first gen community. And then as the months went by, I was really searching for a name that I felt was a good umbrella to the vision that I had for first gen healing. It wasn't that, in the beginning I didn't have the name for that, but right around the time when I took the leap to leave my corporate job is when I got the idea for the name first gen healing, and I looked it up. The hashtag didn't exist. The accounts were all available, and I was like, yes, this is exactly, I think, what will this is a great name, to represent what it is that I want to create. So it's been 6 months, and every single month, the idea of what this can be and what it is has evolved constantly. And I can't wait to see what 2023 has for us as a community and, for the platforms and also like the offerings and the things that I can create for all of us. Now, I personally don't set New Year's resolutions. I don't know about you guys, but a mí me da hueva. I just don't want to create a to-do list at the beginning of the year. So, one thing that I do though is I try to look back on the year and think of what was the theme? Like, what was it that I was focused on, and what do I crave and want for this next year? So for me, 2022 was authenticity. And authenticity is so special to me because over the last few years, I've been on this self discovery journey. I came up on a time of my life where I realized the direction I was headed on wasn't necessarily one that I had chosen, wasn't necessarily bringing me happiness. And I really decided to go deep and go inwards and discover what was going on, like what needed to change. I felt like things needed to change, but I also felt like I didn't know myself enough to know what needed to change. This idea of knowing myself was a new concept to me, and I decided to go all in. And part of this episode is going to be about that journey. But before I could step into who I truly was, I had to figure out who I was, right? So, over the last few years, I've been on that journey, and 2022 was the year of stepping into my authentic self. I craved very deeply to show up as my authentic self in all of the spaces that I occupied. And so 2022 was the year where I made the changes that allowed for me to do that. There was different ways of doing that, and I'm going to share a couple because I think it might be helpful for some of you guys that are ready to be in that phase of your journey. It required setting boundaries with certain people so that I could focus on myself, and also so that I could know that I was allowed to make the changes that I needed. So whether it was like a boundary on, hey, I don't necessarily need your feedback on the direction of my life, or I appreciate your comments, but I don't need them right now, or can you hold off on them until I ask for them? Which I laugh a little bit because I think, it made me really nervous to set boundaries like that, but I truly needed them. I needed to know that in this year, I was going to be my own voice of authority, and that I didn't need to hear others' voices of authority, or others' opinions on my own life. I had gotten a very clear channel, or had made a lot of room for my intuition to come through and for me to like build a good relationship with it. And so I wanted to be able to just listen to my intuition and act on it. And so there were changes, also big ones, right? Like leaving the corporate world. I think my intuition and my path had been leading me towards leaving my corporate career, but I didn't know where I was going to jump to, what was next for me. And so that was part of my journey last year, was discovering, this part, this journey, or this chapter, which is first gen healing. And really, literally, when I was kind of like pointed in this direction, my whole body said yes, this is where you're supposed to be, or where you're supposed to go. And so what was next for me was making the changes needed to head in that direction. And that's what I did. I stepped into that part as well. So if you're in this part of your journey, I hope that you make space and room for what I call your inner poder, because it can really hold you down in moments of change. And I think is like the foundation that a lot of us didn't have for ourselves in our upbringings. There were very few, and still are very little, places that lead us back to ourselves and our inner knowing. And not many places will tell us, hey, you have your own internal knowledge that you can rely on. And also, it's important to build a relationship with yourself and treat yourself the way that you want others to treat you. Because if you do that, then when you make the changes that feel like they're keep taking you out of your comfort zone, your inner poder and yourself can create this, relationship in which you are held. You feel safe. You feel like, okay, it's fine. I know things are maybe like being uprooted around me, or I'm the one uprooting them, but I also know that I've got myself, and I know that I can trust myself, and that I feel safe with myself, right? And I truly think that creating a relationship with your inner poder can bring all of those things for you. This journey that I'm talking about is one that now I help fellow first gens through. And basically, every single week we meet together and we set aside expectations, responsibilities, all of the things that first gens hold really tightly to. And we make room and space for your inner poder, your inner voice to emerge, to tell us, what direction you should be headed in next, what would bring you fulfillment. And I like to have fun with it. In the conversation, there is a lot of vulnerable moments. It does take looking inward and being open to being to going deep. But I also like to challenge you to look at things through different perspectives. And so I have like complimentary homework and worksheets and activities that I assign to you, and also that we do together, to get you to start feeling less stuck and start seeing more of the possibilities that are meant for you. I will say that if you want to work with me, there are a couple of things that I expect out of you. And that's just because in order to get results, or in order to get unstuck, there are a couple of things that I need from you. One is that you're ready to take action. So I know that sometimes the stuck feels bad, and we don't like it, but we're not ready to move away from it. I think that everyone has their own timing of when they feel ready to step out of the stuckness. But if you're comfortable in the stuckness and are not wanting or ready to make changes, this is maybe not for you yet. Second, you have to be willing to go deep. There are things that we will uncover in our sessions, and I will say some of the clients that I've had that get the most results are people that are willing to look in the directions that come up. Sometimes I feel like I'm a little bit of an explorer, and through what you tell me and questions and things, we will maybe come up against a limiting belief or one of the things that's been holding you back or making you feel stuck. And so being willing to go there is an important thing, especially if you're going to invest in coaching. And also, I think that this is a good fit for those of you who have been doing some of the inner work. So if you haven't been to therapy, or maybe like touched any self-development inner work yet, then I would recommend holding off on coaching On my end, typically, I just encourage others to go to therapy and do that first if that's where they're at in their journey. But yeah, get in touch with me. I'm excited to connect, and I'm already envisioning like the individuals I'll be working on with through coaching this year. So excited to support you guys. And I think another piece that's really helpful about coaching is the accountability piece. So I know for myself and a lot of my fellow first gens that I've worked with, accountability is tough. We're good at getting things done when it comes to others, but when it comes to ourselves, it's harder for us to focus on that and to be consistent, you know? And so that's something that I provide support around as well. So, yeah, again, I am so excited to connect with you if you are wanting support around this journey and now are looking for a coach. I share the first gen experience with you, and I think that is also a huge plus, as well as the understanding of some of the things that come with that experience, right? With that being said, my word for this year is alignment. And what that means to me is making sure that the things that I do align with who I am and who I'm becoming. So, whether that be the projects that I take on, or who I spend my time with, or what I spend my time watching and doing. And so, I would love to invite you to do the same for yourself. Take a look back at your 2022 and identify what was the theme. You know, was it love? Was it relationships? Was it happiness? Was it career? Was it friendships or adventures or travel? What was the theme? And then also, what do you want your theme for 2023 to be? What is that word that will help guide you and make sure that you are getting out of this year what you are looking for? And that's honestly one of the reasons why I prefer it over a to-do list or a bucket list for the year, because the things that we sometimes set out to do don't necessarily bring us the feelings that we were looking for. So if we have an overarching feeling or theme that we want to accomplish, that can maybe guide the things that you then set out to do. So today's episode is special because it was created by someone that knew you would be here listening 3 years ago. She created this episode for you without truly knowing that you would be here, but with having this intuitive feeling that one day she would be speaking with fellow first gens. Can you believe that? So that person is me, and I recorded this in September of 2019. Obviously, I had no idea that first gen healing would be a thing, but I will be honest, I have always kind of thought that there was going to be some way that I would create community within the first gen community, and I didn't necessarily know how. I honestly had like the YouTuber dreams years ago. I had bought in this camera here that you see, 20, I think 18 it was. I recorded a few videos and did nothing with them. But this summer of 2019, I left my dream corporate job and I left it with no backup. By the time I recorded this video that you're going to see and listen to, I had already been unemployed for 3 months. And I decided to record this video. I called it Thank You Me. It was thanking myself for taking one of the most unresponsible steps I had probably taken in my life, for taking a gamble on myself, for putting my mental health before anything else, before my reputation, before who I thought I was or who I thought I should be. I left that job after my first panic attack, and I didn't want to have another. And I didn't know what exactly caused it, but I knew work was part of the equation, and I knew something deeper had to change. I knew there was this soul searching that I had to do. My intuition had been calling out to me, and I had kind of shut it up constantly. And I felt like the panic attack was a scream, like, you better pay attention. Something has to change. And so I recorded this video after 3 months of that period. You'll hear me talk about what I had learned in that period and the intent and just different reflections that I had during that time. And the reason I decided to share this with you today is because I think that it's important that if you see me now, you also see the parts before. My goal is to inspire first gens to live the life that they want, the one that their intuition is calling them to live, to listen to themselves and to be more of themselves, to feel empowered to step into who they are truly. It doesn't have to mean big things. It can mean dyeing your hair pink like I did 2022 if you want, getting nose piercings, or having deep conversations with your parents that you never thought you could have, or pursuing a business, buying homes or not buying homes, like truly just feeling empowered to do and go through that self discovery journey, and then not only discover the things that you want or need to change, but then to actually take action and do the things, right? And make the changes. Because I think some people get stuck in the knowing that there needs to be change, but not wanting to ruffle any feathers, whether it's with themselves or others. And so then numbing that desire, right? I think that that's one level of it. I think others will then take a step further and be willing to do some of the inner work, but then they decide to not make the changes that are needed or find them too intimidating. And so my hope is that through my work, whether it's the podcast or social media or whatever I put out, that you feel inspired to take the steps to actually live out the consequences or the changes, whether it's good or bad. In this instance, for example, it wasn't all good. No one clapped and said, "Congratulations, you're doing the deep work." No one around me understood the change or the decision I had made. But it in within me, I felt like that's what I had to do. And so I thought that it would be cool for you to listen to me 3 years ago, talk about still feeling a little bit lost, but also having now some answers. I know that taking 3 months off can seem like a privilege, and it was. I don't think I was privileged in that moment in a way where someone was paying me during that time, or that I knew or depended financially on anyone. I didn't. But also, no one depended financially on me. I reached $0 in my bank account. It was a gamble, but nonetheless, looking back at it, I feel proud of that, and I feel like I made the right decision in that moment. So I'm going to go ahead and play that episode for you, and I'll come back to you at the end to wrap up this episode. And I think if someone were to tell me they were unemployed for 3 months, I would be, and I was still working, or I had never gone through this moment, I would think like, wow, what did you do in those 3 months? How did, how come you didn't go back to work sooner? How did that much time happen? What did you do with that time? Like, I'm sure you had so much time on your hands. What did you do? And I feel like for me, like, that thought always makes me feel like, what have I done with my time, and has it been worth it, and what have I learned, and should I have done more? Am I doing enough? And so I've been listening to Audible, and I've been listening to the book You Are a Badass. And as I'm listening to it for like the third or fourth time now, I've realized I've done so much of the steps, for example, that she claims that will help you live your truth in your life. And I just realized like there is a lot that I've learned in this time. I have been doing a lot that I'm proud of. And even though it's not necessarily what I pictured, I still have gotten a lot out of this time off. And I'm proud of myself for that. And I'm happy. And I want to document that, because I think that it's really cool that that I've done so much internal learning and stuff like that. So I think one of the major things is, while I was at this previous job where I was making, a decent salary, I was very miserable in that time. Like, the team that I was working with, my manager, they were great, and I was learning, but I was somehow just like miserable, and I couldn't necessarily like pinpoint why. I just felt like everything together was just too much. And, you know, like weeks into starting this job, or I think a little over a month into starting the job, my uncle passed. One of the uncles that I was closest with passed away, and I kept working through that. And like 2 months before I had started the job, actually, like the last week that I was at my prior job, my grandma passed. So there was just a lot that had happened, and I just worked through it, and I didn't like necessarily process it. And I didn't know if it was that. I didn't know if it was the job. It was just a lot. It just felt like a lot, you know? And so I decided to quit my job, right? And I think I kept that decision for a couple of months. Like the month of July, I'll be honest, you know, the first week I had off, I had 2 interviews. I had I had 2 phone interviews, and one of those turned into an in-person interview. Other than that though, I didn't start applying online or anything. And then September is here, and I did make it an effort to apply, but again, it wasn't like, for example, I had set a goal of like 2 applications per day, and I didn't do that, and I still haven't applied aggressively. And I don't know if it's like internally, like intuition wise, you know, I just feel like I didn't feel ready to go back to work, or if it's just me being lazy. I'm not sure, but I feel like these 3 months have really been helpful. And I think that even though financially that you know, that hasn't been like the smartest choice to not have a job, I think like for my life, this moment has really helped me clear the noise. And I think what this moment has given me is time to really just learn who I am regardless of the noise, like silent the noise. In a way, I've been a little bit isolated, you know, but like it's just like not intaking others' opinions, not intaking others' ideas of what life should be, of what my life should be, about what my life goals should be. And I'm really thankful that the people around me haven't been trying to input their idea of what I should be doing. My mom has been supportive as well. I think one of the reasons why I needed a break is because I felt like I was following a path that wasn't my own, and in a way following her path. And you know, I didn't expect her to be this supportive. Like she's really just being there for me and being like encouraging and listening and not pushing me and not like judging me or anything like that. And I'm so thankful, you know, that that's happened this time, because then it's allowing me to, it's my own pressure that I'm putting on myself, but not everyone else's. What I was listening to right now is just letting go of your own BS and setting out, you know, like doing things for yourself, taking the steps to live your own truth, taking the steps to live your idea of happiness. And that's what I've been doing. Leaving that job was leaving a secure, well-paying job. That job helped me decide that my health, my well-being, my mental state came first. Like no matter how much the paycheck was, it's not worth it for me to not feel okay, to not have work-life balance. It's just not worth it for me. And that's a huge lesson to learn at my age, I feel. So I'm happy for that, you know. During this time off, I've been really able to try and like, it took me some time, you know, but I've tried to sit down with myself and like think about like what is important for your life. What do you want out of your life? You know, the people that I went to school with and around my age right now, they're getting married, having kids. And even though like when I was with my ex, that was something that I thought would happen for me, when it didn't, I didn't just hyper focus on that. I wasn't like, oh my god, now I need to find another, you know, potential husband to have kids with and to get married with. So I knew that wasn't a driving force. I thought like career, you know, like moving up in my career, making more money was a driving force. And then I had that and I decided that it wasn't. So that eliminated another thing, you know, from what's like what motivates me, what am I working towards? Because that's another thing. I think like one of the reasons I wasn't applying is because I had no idea what I wanted, and I just felt like, what am I doing this for? Like to get myself back into another job that I'm not gonna like? Is it my career? It is kind of like a identity crisis, you know, but like, is it my career? Is it me? Like what is going wrong, and how can I fix it? How can I make it better with the resources that I have, you know? And I don't have many at the moment. So for me, it was like this next job has to mean something, or I have to go into it knowing a little bit more and not going into it blindly and just like, who knows, we'll see, you know, if this makes me happy. Like, I didn't want that for myself, and I think I'm in a much better place today than I was 3 months ago. And that's why I wanted to make the video, just to say I feel like I have learned. I feel like you know, I have accomplished at least that piece. So one thing that I did, you know, I about a couple weeks ago, I was making a cake for a friend's bridal shower, and I was at Michael's. And I think earlier that day I had realized like just how little spending money I had left, and I freaked out. I was in my car and I was freaking out, and I was like, oh my god. But I needed something from there to make the cake, and I saw this it's like a sketchbook, and I just thought it was really nice. It's just like blank paper, and it was like $5, but it's like really good and sturdy. One day I just sat myself and I was like, all right, I'm gonna print stuff that attracts me, print stuff that reminds me of what I want for my life. Like, I don't know what it is. I was just very confused, and I was like, I want to like make this like I want to get a better idea, because it's crunch time. I need to start applying. I'm running out of money, and I need to figure it out. Like, do I just want to have a part-time job, or like a full-time at a Target or Starbucks or something, just for making money at the moment, and then like really keep thinking about what I want? Or do I just want to get an HR job again? Like, is HR what I want to stay in? I was just really trying to hone in on what it is that I want for the moment, and like, what do I picture the rest of my life being, you know? And do I need to, like, for example, really consider teaching abroad? Is that what I want to do at the moment? Or, you know, and is that going to take me to my next stage? Because another part of it is like, I'm also 27, you know, and I know that that's young, but I also feel like it's getting closer to 30, and I don't want to be completely lost for the next 3 years again. I feel like the last 3 years I was lost. I was like, you know, just like in recovery mode or survival mode, and it's fine. I forgive myself for that. I needed that time, but I don't want to do that the next 3 years. I want to accomplish goals. I want to get things that I want. I want to do things that I want, you know, in these next 3 years. So I sat there, right? And so I started printing some stuff off. One of the first things, you know, is happy. I want to be happy no matter what. No matter, you know, like, that's a goal of mine, is to always do things that make me happy. I feel like a lot of people live kind of miserable lives and find happiness in it, but they're really miserable. And I want to always remember that I can be happy, that we create our lives, that we're like the drivers in our vehicle. Stop thinking that we're passengers. And one idea that really like kind of messed with me is like, if you believe in God and the universe, how is it that like it's what they want, it's what God, the universe wants for your life, but also what you want, you know? And I think it's like a conjunction, you know, working with God and the universe and asking for what you want, but accepting what is given. And so either way, you know, I still want to make sure that I think about my happiness. Then the next thing here is, if it costs you your peace, it's too expensive. Huge life lesson that I learned in this previous job, and I want that to continue for the rest of my life. And then it has, I put, life was meant for good friends and great adventures. So that's another thing I do want to foster. I think I have a small circle right now, but it's a tight circle of friends and family, and it's people that I continuously see and talk to. And, you know, I want to continue that. They're meaningful relationships, and I've learned that from my fraternity. You know, it was great, the funnest time of like my life, I feel, you know, or at least the funnest consecutive time of my life. So many friendships, so many people, but I realized from taking a break from that they weren't necessarily all meaningful relationships. And so moving forward, you know, I do want to make sure that they're meaningful relationships, that they're people that I keep up with. Like, realizing or going through a tough time has made me realize how important those people can be, and I want to be just as important to those people when they're going through their stuff. And then it says in great adventures. So I want to be adventurous with my life. I want to be willing to go zip lining and rock climbing and like on travel, on spontaneous travel trips and stuff like that. And hopefully, you know, I find a good balance between like financial stability and doing that as well. Then I printed, don't fall into the trap of living inside your own head. Look outward, keep an open mind, and see the world in all of its beauty. I'm a thinker. I've learned that more than anything these last few years. I can be introverted. I never knew that. I thought I was a little social butterfly because of college, but then I realized I'm a thinker. I'm an introvert for some situations, you know, and especially living alone and stuff. Like I analyze, I think, I process. And I think I put this here because it says have an open mind always, regardless of what my like stance on something is, you know, always be open-minded. And then also be open to life, you know, don't think things down, like let life kind of surprise you too. So the next one is travel, and this one's big, and just the reason for it isn't anything crazy. I'm so curious about other parts of the world. I think that I'm so happy when I'm like in other places and I'm exploring and seeing places outside of my normal day-to-day. And eventually, you know, in the near future, I'd like it to be like about adventures, you know, like if I go to Costa Rica, I want to zip line and do whitewater rafting, and just like be more adventurous on my trips, which I have been a little when I can. But yeah, I just realized like that's important for me. And the reason that it's like a big one is because I realized on this board I don't have a title. I don't have a title. Like it has nothing to do with my career, you know. That was a big one. It's like I think in consulting, I'm in HR, right? And in the previous jobs that I've had and in consulting, I just learned that like it's a craft what I'm doing. It's like a profession, you know, but it doesn't, and I don't know if there's another profession that can bring me like life purpose and stuff, but in the ways that I've done it so far, it's something that I can get into and I can bring passion behind the projects that I'm working on and stuff. But it's not, you know, my life purpose. It's like and also like titles, you know, I've worked with business owners now, a lot of them, because I was in consulting. And you know, I've just realized like they're not the happiest people. Not all of them, you know, the majority of them are stressed out, they're worried, they're not happy. They would come, you know, be happy sometimes to see me because they get to vent, or upset but because they're venting about their day-to-day. So it's, you know, having your own business isn't like the ultimate happiness, right? Having a high title in HR, we see like sometimes it's tied to politics. Sometimes it's tied to the person just being very strategic but not necessarily knowing, you know, more than other people. Sometimes it's just all the right timing. The company is desperate and you came in at the right time, or the company is desperate and you have just this one skill that they could really use, and so you're given this fluffy title, you know. But it doesn't mean like you're like, titles don't mean the person is better or more educated or like a better person or friendlier or more motivating. Nothing like that. It can, you know, but it's not, it doesn't necessarily mean that. And one title can mean completely BS in one company and mean so much more or so much less in another. So really, like, I realized titles and career path and things like that aren't necessarily what I'm like passionate about, what's gonna make me happy. I also have here like a little party scene. So with the home is two things. I think that if I'm gonna be a traveler, someone that's looking for like adventures and stuff like that, then I do need a base. I feel like that's so important, like somewhere that I can call home. And like I said, I don't know if I would buy a home or rent a home or what the home situation would be, but I do want a place that I can come to and feel like, whew, all right, like I just traveled but I'm home, you know, and I feel comfortable. This apartment has become so important to my life, and it's just like my peace, my place where I literally can just be, where I can be the worst or the best version of myself. And you know, it's where I've transformed, it's where I like rest, you know, it's where I think, it's where I dream. So I really like love this place where I'm at. And It's not because it's the nicest, the cleanest, nothing, you know. It's just it has a really nice view, like for my funds, you know. And I would love a place with a nicer view and like maybe like wooden floors, you know, not carpet everywhere, and just like nicer features, you know, like. But other than that, I'm not looking for a mansion. I'm not looking to have the hugest house on the block or anything like that. I just want a nice home, a nice car that works for me. Like right now, I'm so happy with my car. It works. It takes me from point A to point B. I have no complaints, you know, and it's almost 10 years old and I don't care. I mean, it's just, you know, those kinds of things I'm not pursuing. But I think, and so that's what I'm saying. Like, I think home is going to be important. And so I will need a salary that can support that, you know, that can support like travel, adventure, a home, a car, and, you know, my loans and all that to be paid off. And being able to bring people along with me too. I don't want to be a solo traveler for life. I want to be able to involve family or people who don't have the resources, to inspire them, to give them a different look at life or the world, you know. And so that's another big thing. And as you can see, I'm so much more sure of what it is that will bring me happiness and what I'm working for. That's so important. Like, why I always just like, why am I gonna apply to this job? Why do I want this job? Is it because I'm so passionate about benefits? No. So why, you know? And this is my why. And of course, when I interview, like, I'm gonna have to present myself a little bit differently, but like, at least I deep inside know why I'm doing things that I'm doing, what it is that I really want, what's gonna bring me happiness. And that's, I'm discovering it here, you know. That's what's in there. And I'm so happy that I have that to look at, and like a base to work off of, and a base to like realize what it is that I want in my future and why I'm doing the things that I'm doing, and kind of like a focus, you know. People have dreams, like a lot of like the books and stuff that you read about self-help and stuff, they say get clear on what you want, you know. And I always was like, what do I want? What do I want? Do I want a house? Like, I don't think so. Do I want, like, I don't know. It's just like I didn't know what I wanted, and I feel like these last 3 months have really helped me clear the noise, like I said, clear the past like expectations of myself from others and myself, and just really put into perspective what it is that I want. And now it's just a matter of time before I get my next opportunity and I can start making income again, and then I can, you know, keep working at that work-life balance and making sure that I'm staying on track, because now I have this on paper and I have something to look back at. I have a space where it's covered right now, but reminders of my goals and what I'm doing and what I want. So I'm so happy. I'm so thankful to God, the universe, that I had this time. I'm ready for the next step. I definitely need some income now because it was a risky move, you know, and I'm a little bit suffering the consequences of it, you know, by struggling a little to get a job. But I needed it, and I followed my intuition, you know, and I gave myself the time of day that I felt that I needed. And I'm so thankful to myself for doing that, because not everyone does that, and some people just keep going and start feeling more and more miserable and start intaking, you know, start using things to distract themselves. And I didn't want that. I didn't want to just keep distracting myself and keep feeling miserable and not knowing why, you know. And I'm so thankful that I took the time to really peel the onion and to discover what's important to me. All right, first gen, what did you think? What did you think of Priscilla from 3 years ago? I think, you know, one thing that I loved is when I said, I don't want the next 3 years of my life to be the same. So I said that when I was 27. I'm now 30. It's 3 years later. And Priscilla, I am so happy and proud to tell you that you didn't live out those next 3 years the same. You had to go back to HR. You did. You went back to a corporate job because, you know, at that time you hadn't found a way out or what was next for you. But let me tell you, girl, you made the changes needed for you to step into a much more aligned life. And you relentlessly followed your intuition. And We are now on the path that feels so good, that feels so fulfilling, that is no longer transactional, and that has a heartbeat. That aligned income that you've been looking for is here. We found it. And we are really stepping into our purpose this year. At the end of the day, I hope that this episode was helpful in some way, that maybe if you find yourself where I found myself 3 years ago, that encourages you, or that it gives you ideas. I would love to hear from you, if it was helpful, if you found it interesting. Maybe comment on the video or send me a message and tell me, what parts were helpful. And if you have any follow up questions, feel free to let me know. But yeah, I just thought I should do something a little bit different. Next week, we will return back to having a guest on the podcast. I have so many episodes to share with you guys already from fellow Latinx creators, which I think is so awesome. Each conversation is very different, very unique, but always so, I think, important. So I hope that you guys continue to tune in. Don't forget to connect with me if you're wanting support on your journey, especially now at the beginning of the year when we're all feeling this energy and this excitement for change. Share this episode with your amigas, amigos, amigues if you think they would find it helpful. And remember, First Gen, I love you, I love me, and I can't wait for you to love yourself. Bye. Special shout out. So, the sweater that I'm wearing was made by Sin Miedo Apparel. You should find them on TikTok and Instagram. They make beautiful threaded clothing and all types of things, to be honest. This one is a custom order with our logo on it, the First Gen Healing logo. So I just wanted to shout them out because I really love this sweater and I love how it's threaded and it's so, so beautiful. Just wanted to shout out at Sin Miedo Apparel. Okay, bye.